Well, hello everyone, I am Fracture and this is Let's Play Two Worlds 2 on the PC. I think this entire video is going to be me reading these chronicles. I don't think they're going to be very interesting, especially compared to that book we read about time, which I thought was really well done. But let's give it a shot. And being in its own video, you can certainly skip it. I don't think you'll miss much but backstory. A brief chronicle wherein are described shortly the original and successive estates of the Wheel Public, the alteration and the change of sundry offices in the same, the orders of succession of the mayors from the foundation of the settlement of Tyrgil, and thereof consequently. Well, this does sound like it will be a little on the boring side, doesn't it? The succession of mayors, it's going to be like a junior high class in presidents. From the notes of Gregor, the woodsman, by fate and choice, the first elected mayor of the settlement of Tyrgil. It is with heavy heart that I sit down to write this. It's been 21 days since we came to this accursed place, and there is no choice. We must settle down if we wish to survive. The others voted that I should lead them, and so I will do my very best. Only the gods know whether we are to stay here long, and if so, for how long, and what awaits us here. I shall establish this mayoral journal, a town chronicle, as precedent for all future mayors, though I hope it won't need to be kept for very long. From Tirmiz we came, choosing to flee to the Eastern Isles when our crops could no longer sustain us. Of the 30 families, 27 chose to move, and so we packed our belongings and left, our caravan all but crawling for the heavy load it carried. It was on the 44th day of the journey when we met the traveling warrior who warned us of orc patrols on the road. Going back was out of the question, so the choice was simple. We had to find another way to our destination. We found a narrow, overgrown path that appeared it would circumvent the league or so where the orcs were scouring. Where it ended was in a swamp. I'm not sure if it was fate or simply bad luck that we came here. The swamp was peaceful. Places where death surrounds, natural or man-made, are always this way. The path was dry and wide enough for our caravan to push on, though many times our cartwheels got stuck in the mud and had to be pushed out. I remember when we approached the barrier for the first time. Oh, we couldn't see it or smell it, no, but our horses knew it was there. All our beasts did. They wouldn't go within 5 feet of it, whinnying and pacing nervously. It took 4 tries to get them to cross. Would that we had known. That the swamp would never let us out. We looked for a way through for many weeks, sending scouts along the perimeter and searching till the end of the road with our carts and our women and children, only to find that even the way in was unusable to us. When our scouts started dying, and we realized just how easily disease spreads in this place, we decided to forego our push forward and erect a heavy camp. We were still naive enough back then to think someone passing through would be able to help us. Yet, it didn't take long for that delusion to die. Watching the birds and the other creatures of the swamp, we soon realized that no exits exist in this valley. None pass the barrier that keeps us here. It has sat for many hundreds of years at the least a trap waiting to snare any innocents foolish enough to wander in. An entire ecosystem has flourished here, including species entirely unique to this area. Snakes and birds and insects that do not exist in other places I've ever been to. Even our arrows that have been robbed of their flight when they touch that invisible wall, whether carrying our pleas for help or not. It is impossible to know if sound would fare better. It is plausible that a great din could reach beyond the valley, trumpets and drums and shouting, but we have not the means. There are only so many of us here, none with the instruments needed for such a concert, and any handmade devices we could use would not have the strength to travel very far. Besides, we simply don't know if it would work. For now, we do what we can to survive. The construction of the houses is going well. This swamp is rich in resources, and it may sustain us indefinitely if it comes to that. I, for one, am praying it doesn't. From the notes of Croft Riverman, 2nd Mayor of Tyrgil. Spring. The attempt to break the barrier with the wooden ram failed. Damn the gods. I'd be damned if that trunk didn't splinter and fall apart like a piece of rotten junk. People even took to dragging up clubs and smacking it like it was going to break through that way. Didn't work before, it ain't gonna work now, I said. They didn't listen. But Strum seems to think he's got some sort of backup plan. See, we've already tried burning it down, the barrier. No such luck. What's a 50-foot stack of wood gonna change? Nothing. That ain't a plan. That's some wood soaked with alcohol and oil. Sounds like a waste of perfectly good recreation to me. I'd as soon as drink the booze and light ourselves a bonfire in the common. Besides, what if the wood catch outside the village? Turgil is made of wood too. Hell, the whole thing be hotter than the slum's mama's nasty-ass crotch. Oh, sorry, Strum. Is this the public record? Thought me only your daddy knew. Why do people listen to him anyways? He's a half-fed, highfalutin dumbass. The ram was second plan, too. What does that tell you about him? Third time's a charm, I bet he'd say. Can't whistle a wise man out a fool, I'd say. Once a fool, always a fool. Fool me once, well, you know. Well, that one was a bit hard to read. Summer, oh, and we get more of it. Secession's gotten worse. Tensions are growing between Strum and I. He and his group have essentially moved out of Turgil, settled a new camp. Dumb shits, highfalutin dumb shits. I've seen their compound. Looks like it'd fall apart in a week. And their sawing day and night is starting to give me a headache. We'll see how long they last. Well, I know one thing. He won't have nobody to point a finger at and say, you tried sabotage me. This time, hell, nobody. You did this to yourself, big talk and all. Of course, once this is over, we'll have to figure out what to do with him. Don't think it hasn't crossed my mind. Lock him up, maybe. Or make him wear a dunce cap. Rob him of his public image. He don't have much of one anyway. Then again, that might be the key. Without the support of anyone else, Strum will be powerless. And then his nonsense will be nothing I'll have to lose sleep over. I think I'll go for a hunt. Always cools me a bit when I can kill something. The more helpless, the better. Hell, if I can bag a buck or two, maybe we'll have ribs to grill tonight. Ribs. Ribs. Autumn. The split is a fact. Some hell of a diaspora. Even had to give a speech on it. I hate giving speeches. Said we should have leave that jackass Strum and his taro-brained friends to die over there, but I didn't quite gain the support I'd planned. Too many were sympathetic to the idea of a new colony. They've got a better watershed, they says, more fish, more everything, more innovators. Hell, can innovate. I built the damn temple, didn't I? Well, ordered it built. Same pile. Even the name they choose is an insult. Turkalti. Sounds like a bunch of aristocratic bullshit. They're trying to make a fancier version than what we got here. I say, who the hell's gonna care? Not a big tourism industry in these parts, you sots. I think we should declare them lost, but nobody's Nobdoy's willing but Nobdoy's willing to listen to me on that. I don't know why they elected me if they won't believe me when I say something. I hear an awful lot about how I'm the guy they all want to have an ale with, but not a whole lot about my policies in office. Aw, hell, that makes me sad. I can do a good job too. By the way, know who they elected as their mayor over there? That pisshole of a village? Strum, that's right. That jackass and a half. Can't make that shit up, can ye? Nope, sure as hell can't. From the notes of Andreas Johansson, third mayor of Turgil. It was a good year after all. Initially, I had my doubts, but after yesterday's meeting, I feel satisfied. Maybe even happy. The Rivermen years are over, and the feud between our colonies finished. What rejoicing we should have. Of course, it never should have happened in the first place. Having perused Mayor Riverman's notes and his private diary, which he had kept in his very room, I now realize that the jealousy of the old Mayor Strum drove everything. And his greed. You can never underestimate greed. Where that came from, though, I have no idea. Riverman always pretended to be so pious and faithful. Doesn't the word of the gods as told in our holy scrolls, preach rabidly against the excesses of being rich and about the virtues of being poor? That's the way I remember it, at least. Whatever the outcome, the feud is no more, as is Mayor Riverman. We have yet to find the body. I still don't know what could have possessed him to try going after those wolves alone, at his age. But, and may the gods forgive me for saying so, I think it's for the best. Not only have we reunited with our neighbors and begun improving relations, but the innovations of Strum and his cadre are now benefiting both colonies. So what if they couldn't break the barrier? I doubt it can be done. What's more important is our quality of life here, the happiness of those inside. That is how I will govern. Forget the outside world. Let's improve ourselves, the mills, the mechanized farming equipment, the water wheel. None of these were available to us because of Riverman's stubbornness. Now we have them all, and infrastructure is increasing tenfold. And to think, there are still those in our village who devoutly support him, says he was working for our best interests. I have always been a religious man, a truly religious man, who does not wear his beliefs on his sleeve, but instead lives every moment to serve the gods and the well-being of their people. And for the first time in many years, I have faith that future generations may flourish here. It is a hope, a dream, and much yet remains to be done before we see it to fruition, but it exists, and that speaks volumes. Oh, these volumes speak volumes. From the notes of Matthias Trathian, the fourth mayor of Turgil. I must begin this entry, my first, with such sadness. Andreas is no longer with us. Tragically, he fell ill. I cannot help but wonder if we could have prevented it. Some say it was this place, others the stress of his job. Who knows? Everything at this point is speculation. At least he had a good run. Perhaps I should have followed the advice of the others and locked him up when it was clear his obsession to his duties was causing his health to fail. Fed him, nurtured him, given him second chance. I've always been a firm believer in personal freedom, but in hindsight it was so obvious what the right choice was. And so I ordered that there was someone close to Andreas every hour of every day, instead to watch him and keep him company. Bear some of his burden. I was hoping that the sickness would disperse. It didn't. It continued to grow in him until he was too weak to walk. At that point, I know we'd lost him. But there has been some good news of late. Over the last 3 months, we've gained several new citizens, or, as one of them put it, comrades in misery. There is Amesh, a tailor from Sir Ginthia. We've been in dire need of someone skilled in the needle. The woman seemed particularly fond of him, for obvious reasons. I myself am amazed at what he was able to create with what we had in so short a time. Amesh himself appears resigned to his fate. As I spoke to him, he shrugged and said, "The gods light your road. You either follow it or you look for a way in the dark." Such an outlook must be helpful here. I can't say I have his faith, though. Maras is another newcomer, only 3 weeks since he entered the swamp, and already he's won the hearts of many a swooning girl. Small wonder, though, he is, after all, a nobleman by birth. The cruel twist of fate that had him stumble into our midst gives me a strong feeling of redemption. When I was a child, all I had to eat was stale bread and half-molded cheese, and I couldn't go on without mentioning baby Tharia, of course, Mitchell's and Wanda's little one. How quickly time passes, even in here. I remember Mitchell as a wee one himself, a violent boy, always picking fights with the others, but Wanda was so sweet. Perhaps Tharia's temperament will side with hers. Time does strange things to the mind. To think that we were having children and still feel the same as I did when they were newly born. From the notes of Maras Castern, the fifth mayor of Turgil. Cursed be the day this place shat its way into existence. I was destined for greatness and riches. Thank the gods no one will read this until my death. Let them know how much I've swindled them, stupid filthy peasants. Hell, I probably think this was funny if I had happened to someone else. It's ironic I escaped my cell in the dungeons beneath Hatmandor, only to end up here in this prison far worse than the kind with the 4 stone walls and a dirt floor. Here the torture isn't the time, it's the other people. They banter and bicker like animals. I can't stand a single one. Sometimes I think I've died and gone to hell. Wouldn't be too far-fetched. And they thought I was a nobleman. Worthless pricks. Oh yes, what a sad, sad story. A Hatmandori nobleman robbed on the highway, helpless victim to a renegade faction of the Thieves Guild. They lapped it up like dogs. But it's all going to hell now. They're not happy with me. They keep asking where their gold is. I should protect them from that sort of thing, they say. And I don't think they're buying the old business of taxing them until the aura shits. I can only explain that one away so many times. Let's try that again. And I don't think they're buying the old business of taxing them until the aura shits. Okay, doesn't make any sense to me. I can only explain that one away so many times. I don't think you can explain it at all by what you've written. Also, they keep demanding to know why I promised I'd break the barrier if I couldn't get it done. Now there's a lie, and there's a lie, and I know the difference. Never got caught in either one, but I may have stretched myself thin this time. Have to admit I forgot myself. In a city, nobody ever knows your face. You can get away with practically anything, long as the guards don't catch you. Here, on the other hand, everyone knows each other by name. They're always in each other's business, and you can take a piss here, and you can't take a piss here without someone knowing. Guess it's time to bolt. Got a good sword and a bow, plenty of auras, and I've scooped out of the tax pot. Not that they're any use here, but on the outside, I never bought that crap about the barrier. You know, there's always an escape somewhere. These lazy swine probably just didn't look hard enough. So I'll tell you, dear reader, what I'm going to do. Dive. It's the simplest thing. If it doesn't work, at least my mother will know I died a rich man, eh? Well, she's dead, but you get the point. Best part about this? I've never had to see Casaria again. Carissa again. She thinks I don't notice when she undresses that craven Lars with a glance. But I can see it every time, that slattern. Why'd she even marry me? Thinks I don't know that they've been sleeping together? Pfft. I've got half a mind to leave her in the swamp, maybe drown her, or throttle her thirst, even stab her once, or twice while looking in her eyes so that she knows I know. But it'll cost me time, and time's in short supply, so it will have to remain a fantasy. At least I know that she'll be doing for the rest of her life. At least I know what she'll be doing for the rest of her miserable little life. That may be vindication enough. Almost got everything packed. I think I'll wait until dusk before embarking on my little vacation. Goodbye and good riddance. See y'all in hell. Last thing, I hear Carissa's talking outside. A man's voice is with her. That coward Lars. I can see them. Her back's turned. Maybe I will kill the bitch after all. From the notes of Andre Hagerford, the 6th Mayor of Tergil. The hunt for Maris, my predecessor, is finally finished. Aaron's posse saw him dive by the old well and waited for hours. He never came out. On either side. All that gold he was carrying must have weighed him down. You'd think a man who pretended to be high office for so long would be able to figure that out. But then again, Mars' leadership wasn't the only thing that constantly gave me the impression he was just putting on airs. I can't help but wonder if, in his last agonizing moments of life, as the muck and mud filled his nose and eyes and lungs, he decided maybe in the end it just wasn't worth it to be such a cold, callous fraud. I suppose it wouldn't matter. People like that don't change. That's why I've made my vow. As long as I'm in office, this village will not be tolerant on crime. Morris's notes have left us with extensive insight into the workings of the criminal mind, and this should be a foundation for our justice system. We will not allow this to happen again. But poor Carissa. And to think that her good nature was what doomed her, that this maniac murdered her and Lars in his desperation to get away over nothing but imagined jealousy. Lars, what a good man. The women are now comforting Tania. Will she ever recover? Her husband to be murdered by Maris on the very day that they wanted to inform the village of their plans to marry, for nothing more than hiring Carissa to do the planning. What a world we live in. Mere Andre, I still can't get used to the way that sounds. Suppose I'll have to. Truth be told, it only sounds good when a stranger says it. and there are so few strangers in Turgil. From the notes of Aaron Kitewing, the 7th Mayor of Turgil, my calculations, it has been exactly 427 days since I started reading this journal. Since I found myself trapped in the swamp. I've long pondered if, knowing what I know now, I would still come here if I were able to go back and do it again. And while I tried to convince myself that yes, I would, that a man of science and sorcery would never pass an opportunity to investigate a bizarre phenomenon such as our barrier, the truth is that I feel like I've wasted my life. And a life is a terrible thing to waste. In hindsight, nothing else seems to matter. Still, I like to think that I've made good use of my time. I've helped the people learn about their environment, how to survive, how to endure, how to flourish, and in time they even named me the Mayor of Turgil. I still marvel at how willing they were to trust a wizard, considering how much city folk I used to live with hated me. I remember my student days, how conversation outside the university would cease the moment someone saw me in my novice's robes. You can't trust a wizard any more than you can trust the Geriza, they'd say sometimes in unison. I even discussed it with Jacob recently. His reaction was, "Wish those city folks saw how you govern us, and then they might reconsider." Ah, Jacob, you always know how to put me in brighter spirits. But of the barrier. First, I'm certain that any physical attempts to shatter the barrier are bound to fail. I witnessed the villagers from both settlements repeat the ideas which the previous mayors wrote. I've heard of dozens of other concepts proposed, all to no avail. I did not discourage those attempts, for a man occupied and hopeful is a happy man, but I knew that they would achieve nothing, and I was right. There is no longer any doubt in my mind that this barrier is purely of magical nature. When I originally left my hometown to investigate the magical remnant, my training led me to sense in this region. It so turned out that I was not that I had sensed. There is a deeper magic here, of which the barrier is merely the byproduct, something dark and sinister, hostile to life, but I haven't the time to speculate on it now. I'm not a thoroughly trained magician, truth be told, but I do have some training, and enough to know when the abuse of magic is present. The magic which I eventually managed to sense in the barrier is ancient and utterly unknown to me, but it is clear its purpose is not being used for good. I now realize that the very remnant of dark magic was the reason I ventured here in the first place. It was never about the barrier. I set out expecting nothing but an hour's ride and at most 2 or 3 of basic thaumaturgic investigation. That lurking, dormant presence that I had sensed, and above all the feeling of its oldness and yes, belligerence, led me inexorably to this conclusion. It must be active, not a spell. There is a source powering this magic, and the barrier that is not in any state of dormancy. I have never informed anyone of these findings. I dread doing so. I do not know if I'd recognize this magic source if I saw it. It could be a person, a beast, anything at all. Spilling this information to the public could result in my assassination. I'm hoping those who read this account will not be doing so as they nod their heads over my murdered corpse, saying to themselves, well, at least he had that part figured out. I must be cautious with my next move. Keep resolute or lavish. The Chronicles of the Settlement of Turgil, ex officio, Volume 2, from the notes of Argus Aiton, the 8th Mayor of Turgil. So these are much more recent than the previous ones, apparently. I have neglected this new chronicle for many months, being occupied with our preparations for winter, but food supplies are stocked now, and so we should be able to spend the snowy period in some comfort. Interestingly, the previous mayors noticed that the winters in office were quite mild when compared to those outside world. Or at least what newcomers reported. I, being born and raised here in Turgil, have no experience with such things. Newcomers indeed. We've finally begun to see more. There was a powerful dry spell for a while. It's still a rare occurrence for a new member to join our little community. Life here must be so much more difficult to accept for one of them than for those born and raised here. As expected, their initial confusion, anger, and desperation can last for weeks, even months. I wonder if it's any different in Tirkilty. I've spoken to some of our newer residents at length already. It seems that trouble brews in the outside world, a conflict between orcs and humans. The unrest is apparently causing some unsafety on the roads, which may explain why so many more people have arrived recently than in decades past. But orcs? I find it hard to believe in such a race. Now, I'm no skeptic, but I can't picture a beast that speaks like a man. Khan, he himself arrived at Tergil only recently, had many encounters with them before coming here. Still, there has never been an orc that's wandered into the swamp. There's no mention of it in the chronicles either, and yet Khan's hatred for them runs deep. And for that I'm inclined to believe him. Seems to me that a man couldn't have such animosity towards a fairy tale monster. Of course, if Roke were more forthcoming, he might have a tale or two to tell. Rumor about town has it that he fought them back in his days as a centurion for some king he served. Can't remember the name. There are no kings here, but Roke being Roke, it would take a spell more powerful than any I've heard of to make him recall it. Sometimes I think the only thing he knows how to do is curse. But, foolish me, I've digressed. Our citizenry has expanded because of this slow but steady trickle of newcomers, as well as their gets. Young Spurius and Erila have just named a daughter. Barnes even carved her a cradle. Little Tessa is a fiery one indeed, and if she has anything of her mother's temperament, she will certainly give the next generation of young men here no small measure of angst. Winter. The new priest seems to fit in well, as well. I welcome his influence on our youngsters, and our small but faithful congregation here. He seems to me a humble, upright man of the gods. I was never truly one to heed religious counsel, but I may consider it with this man. He is friendly, has good people skills, knows how to speak to a man in a way he can understand, and even take him for a drink, if he didn't insist so much on his vow to abstain from alcohol. Sadly, Khan has left us for Tirkilty. He feels his skills as a fisherman will be more useful there, considering their watershed is greater than ours. He reminds me of that young mage who wandered into the swamp in the summer with all that talk of purpose. There was a man let's try this again. There was a man I did not, for one, in need of spiritual guidance. Okay, I didn't think he'd waste a fig of his time on that nonsense. Spring! That Roke! I know it's a blessing to have a proper soldier, or ex-soldier, as he keeps saying for some reason, among us, but I sometimes wish he would give others a break. He's been with us for over 10 years, and yet he never misses an opportunity to remind us that he did not adjust to having to live here. I swear he seems to expect everyone to fall in and walk upright, even in their sleep. No wonder he only really allowed one person to befriend him, that youngster Aidan. Nice boy, that one. Keeps coming in from Tirkilty, though mostly to meet Roke now. I hope Roke won't turn him into a hard-ass duplicate of himself. That it would do them both well if some of Aidan's politeness wore off on Roke. That boy Aidan from Tirkilty has been here a lot recently, mostly to meet with Roke. I wouldn't mind if some of it... I'm sure I just read that. He certainly needs it. Aidan seems to have had a good upbringing. I believe he means to court young Nalia, a healer from his village. I caught him picking flowers for her, and when I asked who they were for, not seriously, of course, but his answer was honest enough. The name he gave was hers. She's a sweet girl, and of ripe age. She brings us medicinal herbs when she knows we are in need. Medicine is always in short supply. I had no idea her and Aidan were close, or maybe his feelings are brewing from a distance. It's hard not to speculate on such matters. There are so few young people here, and their passions are so much wilder than ours, of a more tested age. Sometimes I think everyone in the swamp enjoys living vicariously through them. Who knows what path young love will take? I must admit it brings me much happiness old Roke is passing some of his training on to the boy. Giving him his old bow was a marvelous idea. Watching Aidan practice makes me wonder what else could be achieved, being such a quick study. I wonder what Roke thinks. He'll ever speak a word of praise, only criticism, but in his heart he must know that Aidan's an adept. Felt the need for prayer today. I don't know what came over me. I'm not an overly religious man, but we all have our moments of weakness, and the hand of the divine is supple indeed. Didn't see our new priest, Father Garadil. Probably visiting Tircalti again. I wish he'd spend more time with us, but it's a delicate matter. We're lucky to have him at all. Thwain's garden has been producing marvelously. The apples are delicious. Thwain's modest as ever, says only the better sunshine we've been having this year, but I keep joking with him that it's probably the spells of some secret admirer. Little Fiona will be turning 6. She's been having a party, and I thought about baking a cake. Not going to happen with Arila around, though. She'll cut my hand off and bury it in the icing, then force feed it down my throat if I try to compete with her baked goods. But that's the kind of mayoral appearance I have time for. Summer placed flowers on Mayor Kitewing's grave today. Meditated for a while. He was such a good leader, and I seldom feel I've lived up to his legacy. Actually, to be honest, complete inadequacy is what I feel when I stand next to his grave, like a child who can do nothing but fail. Perhaps it's only my memories of him working an illusion, and he wasn't such a great man after all. Then I look at the village now and how much it seems to have fallen, even in the short time I've been in charge. Even his death seems more noble that I'm capable of. To poison oneself with a gas? How awful. Some people think it was accidental, but others think it was suicide. Spent some time revisiting Kitewing's notes, surprised such a wise man could spend so much of his time meditating on rubbish, fallen deities, hidden curses, spirits. His diary reads like a poor man's occult book. I think Kitewing's arcane training finally got the better of him. Maybe he should have spent less time devoted to creating breakthrough spells, to destroying the barrier, and more being grounded in reality, and to think I always looked up to him. But concerning more pleasant subject, Mayor Torgo crossed over to share a drink. Their mead is fine this summer over in Tircalti. Can't wait to get my hands on some more of it. Last year their pies were better than ours, but who gives a rat's pink ass about pies? We need to brew more mead, better mead, and quick. The festival of the long sun is fast approaching. Maybe I should ask the priest if we can use a cellar under the temple. They used to brew casks there before he and all his piety showed up. Hopefully he'll be in Tircalti again and we can slip them in unnoticed. I swear he's been spending more time than with his own parish. Okay, let's see. Night of St. Jeremy's morning hours. Death and panic, demons everywhere, priests alive, tries rituals, says maybe he can stop them. Aidan's all bloody, half insane, says he killed some. Must keep the people calm. The day of St. Jonathan's. I have regained some of my composure. My apologies to you, dear reader, for the sloppiness that has befallen this account. Chaos is everywhere, but I will do my best to proceed with a steady hand. We are locked in the temple. There's another group in the inn. We watch our surroundings religiously for any signs of the enemy. We still don't know what happened. We don't have time to open an investigation. Survival is our only priority. What sounded like an explosion woke me in the night, and most everyone in the village. It sounded distant, and perhaps coming from Tircalti. Barn was the first to respond. The rest of the men, myself included, though I had wished I hadn't been, followed his torchlight deep into the swamp until it shook violently and extinguished. Then they came, shambling, demons wearing the skins of our loved ones, or the long dead, or the soldiers buried beneath the swamp. The bodies were possessed, hungry, infested with fungi and maggots and more advanced stages of rot. The priest claims to have the village protected, but I have my doubts. I dare not go outside. I trust that he's done his best effort, but I think only the gods can save us now. Day of Malachi. A week has passed since the attack. There must be 1, if not 200 of them or more roaming around. 2 at least for every man, woman and child in Turgil. But it seems the priest's protective rites have held them off. They won't enter the village. Oh, says they could, if they figured out how to all attack at once, but fortunately for us, the brain is one of the first organs to rot. Refugees from Turkalti have been few and far between. Their stories are identical to ours. A rending crash awoke them in the night, and then attacked by the undead. Most watched their loved ones ripped to shreds, some of them eaten. It is an awful thing to discuss. I wish I had never lived to see such times. To reach Turkalti, 10 would have to die for every one who made it. That assuages the guilt, some that we did not rush to their aid. They had it far worse than we did here. Most of us survived. Well, a fair amount. Even here in Turgil the dead are too numerous to name. But one thing all the survivors seem to share is the sighting of a woman, a dark shape floating above the fen when the reanimated attack, an apparition. Chadrick's words were a frightening testament. He says the woman he saw had glowing eyes, but in all fairness, he was delirious. So were many others among the townspeople who survived. I didn't see anything but the shit-colored bog and those terrible hungry faces. What's a man to think? As much as I love there are many here that are overly zealous about their superstitions. I hope that any of them who read this in the future will not take it as an insult, but as a wake-up call. Chadrick was badly cut by one of the undead, and his fever had made him delusional. No potion helped, and he died within a day. So, my dear reader, I will let you be the judge about that figure in the swamp. Khan, the strongest man in Turkalti, was also injured. The women are tending to him now, and there is good chance that we will be burying him in the morning. Aiden, whose injuries are less serious, well, let's be honest, he was practically unscathed, hasn't said a word since he arrived, stumbling into the priest's protection. Even Roke couldn't get him to speak. We can all see in his eyes what he's thinking. No one's seen Nalia. Alania survived, which is surprising. She's quite old, frail, and prone to sickness, but not reanimated corpses, apparently. Maybe they prefer younger flesh. I can identify with that. I myself would sooner take a rack of lamb than a shank of mutton. About 3 weeks later. We stay mostly in our houses now, when we're not together. In the inn and the temple have become common meeting places. Some have tried finding their consolation gardening or in doing woodwork, even in romance, though the pickings are even slimmer now than they ever were, and they were never good. It's almost fascinating watching the undead stumble about. They can't get past the priest's spells, and if they could only figure out how to use the teleport, they'd have free reign in this place. But once again, and this has become a source of endless vindication to me and my friends, when it comes to reason, they simply don't have the necessary hardware. Oldmere Kitewing had people build those. Oldmere Kitewing had people build those in his time, activating them with his magical abilities, and from what I remember, they were indispensable in crossing quickly to Turkalti. It's all a blur now. 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 decades, it makes no difference. That life is gone. I take back what I said earlier about Kitewing. He foresaw all of this. Our teleports are rigged in such a way that they won't admit anything but a living, breathing person. So even if the pus sacks, as we've taken to calling them, find their way into one accidentally, it won't self-report here or anywhere else. Once again, he led our people where I failed. Even from beyond the grave, he best me. 2 days after the last note. Heard a scream yesterday, undeniably human. There could be no mistaking. It was the voice of a terrified human, not a hallucination either, though I am growing more prone to them. No others verified what I'd heard. No, others verified what I'd heard too. Was it some survivor at Turkilty who got lost in the swamps and somehow managed to outrun them? Not likely, but not impossible either. Perhaps it's best not to dwell on it too much. Every time I think of the poor people, my mind begins to wander. To think we would have beat them this year at the Festival of the Long Sun. I tasted both ales, and ours was by far superior. Or was it perhaps another lost traveller? That's the only other solution I can think of. If it was, I hope he or she wasn't someone important, or someone who could get us out of here. When all has one to meditate on is the closeness of death, the mind becomes prone to madness. Several days afterwards, the stench is unbearable now. Putrefaction of the bodies closest to the village is in full swing, and it's only boredom that has allowed us to begin to notice it. We dare not risk stepping out even 1 inch outside the priest's protective rites to retrieve them for a proper burial. The eyes of the reanimated are ever watchful. There are so many of them. A week later, strange noises haunt us in the night. Not the queer sucking sounds the undead make when they're restless rambling through the mire. No, instead this is a new evil, a howling, beastly moon cry. I am no superstitious man, at least. I still try to convince myself that, even though I lock all my doors and windows, even in the daylight, and listen to a priest for guidance on all matters except shitting and eating. But I can only imagine that the lords of the underworld have seen our village and are unleashing upon us the very hounds of hell. Roke saw a wolf-like shape moving quickly from tree to tree outside the protective rites, a bushy-tailed beast running on all fours, closer to the size of a horse than a wolf. And we have all heard its call. Doubts linger, nightmares are an escape to the waking world. And the wasps, thank the gods every day for sending us Father Garadel. There were once beekeepers in Turkilty, and I was never a fan of honey except in mead, but I'd rather be swarmed by 1,000 of those than one of these giant man-eating insects that have taken their place. From whence has this darkness stirred? Sometimes I think I'd give my life to find out. Madness is a flirtatious bitch. 6 weeks later, probably. Hard to believe that Khan lasted so long in his condition. He could have taken a full recovery if we had had the right medicine. Such is our lot in life. And his passing marks the last of Turkilty's refugees. They're all dead or of dual citizenship. Young Aidan, who still won't speak a word, could fall under that category. His lineage grows hazy in my memory. His father was... Who was his father again? His mother? I can't recall. So much simpler is this life. The priest is hardening now, very straightforward. We all appreciate this, even Roke. No one has time for the flowery language, which is a disease in his profession, or the unkeepable promises that we're all well loved by the gods. He reminds us constantly that we are at war, that the only way to win their favor back is to win a single fight that can turn a lad into a man, and thus a single show of strength that can save a soul. He says, this is our fight. He always adds, and then the gods hate the weak. Frightening as this is, he's right. The strength has put a little more wind in all our sails. I need a few days alone. Perhaps I'll spend the weekend at Shalia's house to meditate on all that has passed. Father Garadel has shown me how to empty my mind, to fill it with the will of the gods. It doesn't help. It does help, and I always feel refreshed. There is so much here to worry over. The morning after, took some of the belongings and left them at Sheila's. My dearest Maya wants to stay with me there, but I had to say no. I need to get away. Of Mayor Aiton. Sadly, our mayor was killed in the swamps. He apparently lost his mind and ventured outside the circle of my protection. I have been asked by the people to replace him as leader, and I accept this task with the most humble grace. Leading Turgil is the greatest duty I could ever hope for. These are fine people, and I intend to illuminate their path as best I can. Friar Garadel. All right. Well, wasn't that fun, boys and girls? So with that, I say I thank you for watching, and I thank you for listening, and I encourage you to leave comments or suggestions or infantile abuse. I promise I read it all, and if you like my videos, don't forget to subscribe to my channel or give me the thumbs up, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one, folks. Cheers.